Picture a Tudor woman. Not a queen, not a portrait. The one you already carry in your head. The one 400 years of jokes and costume dramas have built for you. Go on, look at her. Her teeth are brown stumps. Her hair is a stid nest under a greasy cap. Her dress could stand up on its own with the filth worked into it. She empties a chamber pot out of an upstairs window without looking. She bathes once a year in May, whether she needs it or not. And she smells so bad that the flowers she carries at her own wedding are there to keep her from gagging on herself. She has never seen soap. She has never wanted to. She lives ankle deep in mud and dung, and she has stopped noticing either one. Now here is the uncomfortable part. Almost nothing in that picture is true. Not the teeth, not the once-a-year bath, not the wedding flowers, not the woman who doesn't care. That picture was assembled long after she was dead, by people who never met her, out of jokes, half-read quotes, and the smugness every century feels toward the one before it. And the real woman, the one who actually woke in the dark in 1540 or 1571 or 1596 in Coventry or Norwich or a farmhouse in Kent, spent a staggering share of her waking life doing the exact thing the caricature says she never did. Fighting dirt, hauling water, boiling lye, scrubbing linen until her knuckles cracked and bled. She fought dirt the way we fight debt, constantly, unglamorously, and mostly without winning, but never, ever by surrender. So tonight we're going to take that caricature apart. Piece by piece, 10 lies about Tudor women and the state of their bodies, counted down from the merely wrong to the biggest, most stubborn lie of all, the one you have heard repeated so many times by so many confident people that you will probably catch yourself resisting when we get to it. And here is the contract for the night, so you know exactly what you're getting. Every lie gets a year. Every lie gets a place. Every lie gets a document, a will, a household account book, a court roll, a printed book that came off a real press while these women were alive. Because the case against the caricature isn't built on wishful thinking. It's built on paper that survived. Where the record is thin, I will tell you it is thin. Where a famous quote turns out to have no source at all, I will say so out loud instead of quietly repeating it. And where the truth is genuinely grim, and some of it is grim, there will be lice in this story and brutal laundry labour and bathhouses closed in fear of plague. The grimness stays in, because the point of tonight is not that the past was secretly pleasant. The point is that it was organised. These women had a system. It was coherent, it was demanding, and it worked far better than you've been told. Getting that wrong doesn't just insult them. It makes the past useless to us, because a past made of cartoons can't teach anybody anything. One more thing, and it matters. The years in this story are real. The prices are real. The books, the laws, the court cases, the account entries, real, and I'll date them as we go. But the eyes I'm going to lend you are borrowed. The dairymaid, the midwife's neighbour, the soap boiler's wife. They are stitched together from wills and inventories and household books, composites built from 100 real women who left their marks, their laundry lists and their linens behind, but not their names in any story. I'll tell you nothing through their eyes that the documents can't carry. That's the deal, and I'll keep it, so I make these history stories, and honestly, at this point, I've given up trying to figure out whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who genuinely want to lie in the dark hearing about lye rinses, linen smocks, and the men who emptied London's cesspits at 2 a.m. for good money. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Pull the blanket up. Here we go. Lie number 10. The lie goes like this. A Tudor privy was a hole in the ground and nothing more. A pit, a plank, maybe a shed if you were lucky, and beyond that, nothing. No design, no maintenance, no thought. People simply lived over their own filth until it overflowed, and nobody in the entire 16th century ever looked at the situation and tried to do better. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and the cart has woken you again. You're a merchant's wife in London, in the autumn of 1596, lying in the dark beside your snoring husband in a timber house off Cheapside, and the sound coming up from the street is one you know, the way modern people know the sound of the garbage truck. Iron-shod wheels on cobbles, the slow clop of a patient horse, and men's voices kept low because there's a fine for waking the street. You can smell them before the cart even stops. Everyone can. It's the gong farmers, the night soil men. And tonight it's your turn. You hear the side gate open. Your servant yawning lets them into the yard. Then the scrape of the cellar flags being lifted, and the wet, heavy sound of shovels going into the cesspit under the house, and the thud of each load into the barrels they'll carry out on poles between them. It is, by any measure, one of the worst jobs in England. It is also, and this is the part the caricature never mentions, one of the better paid manual jobs in London. These men can earn in a night what a common labourer earns in days, precisely because the work is foul and the city cannot function without it. They are regulated, they are hired, they are fined if they spill their loads in the street, and the records of those fines still exist. The city does not ignore its filth. The city runs a nighttime industry to move it, cartload by cartload, out to the lay stalls beyond the walls, where some of it is sold to farmers and to the saltpetre men, because waste that can be turned into crops or gunpowder is not waste, it's stock. You lie there listening, doing the arithmetic every householder does. The pit under your house is brick-lined. Your husband paid for that, grumbling years ago, because an unlined pit leaks into the neighbour's cellar, and an unlined pit gets you summoned before the ward mote, the ward's own court, where your neighbours will testify against your seepage with real feeling. It has happened on this street. You were there when Widow Marsh, 3 doors down, complained of the tanner's pit weeping through a cellar wall, and the ward mote gave him a deadline and a fine schedule, and the work was done within the month. That's the machinery the hole-in-the-ground story erases. Complaint, court, deadline, fine. Sanitation by lawsuit, street by street, year after year, in records that survive by the thousand. And upstairs, in your own chamber, there is no hole at all. There is a close stool, a box, honestly a rather handsome box, joined oak with a hinged lid and a pewter pot inside, and a padded seat covered in leather. You've seen finer ones. The great houses cover theirs in velvet with gilt nails, and the royal ones, everyone has heard this, are cushioned like thrones, attended by a gentleman whose position, groom of the stool, is one of the most coveted at court, because proximity is power even at its least dignified. The pot is emptied, scoured and returned by the servant every morning. It doesn't sit reeking in the corner of the caricature. It's furniture, it's maintained. And in the probate inventories that get taken when householders die, close stools are listed and valued along with the beds and the brass, because they're property worth counting. And this very year, this is why I put you in 1596, a godson of the Queen herself, Sir John Harrington, has published a book called A New Discourse of a Stale Subject, called The Metamorphosis of Ajax. Ajax is a pun. A jakes is slang for a privy, the way you'd say the John. And underneath the schoolboy joke, The book is an engineering manual. Harrington describes, with diagrams and a parts list and prices, a valve water closet, a cistern, a seat, a stopper, and a flush of water to carry everything down and away, with a water seal to hold back the smell. He built a working one at his house at Kelston near Bath. The Queen is said to have had one installed at Richmond Palace. The design is real, the book is real, you can read it today, and it precedes the patented flush toilets of the 18th century by nearly 200 years. It didn't conquer the world, no sewers to connect it to, and Harrington's court career was more joke than juggernaut, but the point stands. In 1596, in England, a man could publish a flush toilet, and the reading public got the joke because they too thought about this problem. Everyone thought about this problem. It was one of the great shared engineering problems of urban life, and they knew it. Now the grim part stays in, as promised. The pits did overflow sometimes. The fines exist because the offences existed. In poor, crowded parishes there were shared privies serving whole courts of houses, and they were exactly as bad as you'd fear, and the Wardmote presentments say so in furious detail. Henry VIII's own palace at Hampton Court had a great house of easement, a communal facility on 2 levels that could seat 28 people at once over a brick-vaulted drain that servant boys were sent in to scour. The past was not fastidious by our standards, but a hole in the ground and nothing more. The gong farmers' wages, the brick-lined pits, the Wardmote fines, the inventoried close stools, and a flush toilet with a parts list in print in 1596. The documents laugh at the lie. They thought about it constantly. They engineered it. They litigated it. They paid for it. You listen to the cart roll away down the street, lighter by your household's accumulation, heavier by your household's coins. The smell fades. The street settles. Your husband never even woke. You pull the coverlet up and think, as you drift back down, that the pit is clean now for another long while, and that Widow Marsh can find something else to talk about. That's lie number 10. A hole in the ground and nothing more. The truth. A system with wages, courts, furniture, and one glorious too early flush. Lie number 9. The lie goes like this. Childbirth in Tudor England was a death sentence. Every labour was a coin toss. Women died in droves. Every family buried more mothers than it raised. And a woman going into her lying-in said goodbye to her husband, the way a soldier says goodbye before a battle he does not expect to survive. Someone is gripping your hand hard enough to grind the bones together, and you would not dream of pulling it away. You're in Norwich in February of 1571, in an upstairs chamber with the shutters closed and cloth hung over them besides, because the room where a woman labours is kept dark and warm and closed. That's the custom, that's what's owed her. And the woman gripping your hand is your neighbour Agnes's daughter, 23 years old, in the 11th hour of her first birth. You're one of her gossips. The word hasn't gone sour yet. It still means what it says, God sibs. The women a mother chooses to be with her, and being chosen is an honour you don't refuse. There are 5 of you in the room, plus her mother, plus the midwife. No men anywhere near. The husband is downstairs feeding the fire and jumping at every sound through the floorboards, and that is the whole of his job tonight. The room smells of wood smoke and sweat and the caudle warming by the hearth. That's the drink for labour. Ale or wine thickened with egg and sugar and spice. And you've had a cup yourself because gossips work long shifts. The midwife has her sleeves rolled and her hands greased with butter, and she is the calmest person in the room, which is her actual profession as much as anything her hands do. Her name is known in 3 parishes. She was licensed by the bishop. That's real, and it's worth stopping on because nobody expects it. Midwives in Tudor England were licensed by the church. She stood before the bishop's officers with neighbours to vouch for her skill and swore an oath, and the texts of those oaths survive: to serve poor women as readily as rich, to never switch a baby, to never let a child die unbaptized, to report the truth of a birth's parentage. A licensed profession, overwhelmingly female, its paperwork sitting in diocesan archives to this day. The caricature has no room for her, so the caricature leaves her out. And here is the number the caricature cannot survive, so hold on to it. The parish registers, baptisms and burials, kept in England since 1538 by order of Thomas Cromwell, which is why historians can even do this arithmetic, have been counted, parish after parish, decade after decade. And the counting shows that in Tudor and early Stuart England, out of every 100 births, roughly 98 to 99 did not kill the mother. The maternal death rate ran somewhere near 1 to 2 in 100 deliveries. Now be careful with that number, because it cuts both ways, and I promised you honesty in both directions. 1 or 2 in 100 is horrifying by modern standards, hundreds of times worse than a modern hospital, and a woman bearing 6 or 8 children rolled those dice 6 or 8 times. So across a whole childbearing life the danger was real, and every woman knew a woman it had killed. The fear was rational. Women wrote their wills while pregnant. Some of those wills survive, and they will put a stone in your throat. But a death sentence, a coin toss. 98 women in 100 walked out of that dark room alive, and most of them did it again and again, and lived to stand as gossips in other women's chambers, gripping other hands. The overwhelming, ordinary, documented experience of Tudor childbirth was survival. The girl on the bed cries out, and the midwife talks her through it, low and steady, a working rhythm, the voice of a woman who has done this some hundreds of times. You wipe the girl's face with the damp cloth. Clean linen, there's a stack of it warmed by the fire, and it was boiled and bleached before it ever came into this room, because the one thing every birth chamber has in quantity is washed cloth. Her mother has the swaddling bands ready, and the childbed linen, some of it embroidered, some of it inherited. Childbed linen turns up in wills, passed from mother to daughter like plate because it is treasure. There is nothing casual in this room. Everything was prepared for, over months, by women who planned this the way a captain provisions a ship. Toward dawn, the midwife's voice changes tempo, and the room tightens around the bed like a fist, and then there is a thin, furious, magnificent wail, and the fist becomes applause. A girl, loud, pink, indignant, hink. The midwife ties and cuts the cord, checks her over with quick, expert hands, and passes her to be washed. Washed, in warm water, first thing before she's swaddled. Even the newborns of this filthy caricatured century got a bath before they got anything else. The mother is washed too and given fresh linen and settles back against the bolster looking like a woman who has walked out of a burning building carrying the thing she went in for. And now begins the part of the custom that tells you what this society actually thought new mothers deserved: the lying in. For as long as the household can afford, a few days for the poor, up to a month for the comfortable, she is not to work. She stays in her chamber, in bed, warm, fed the best food in the house, visited by a rotation of women, while her gossips and her mother run her household around her. Her husband cooks or hires help or eats badly and endures it. The month ends with her churching, the Thanksgiving service that welcomes her back, And whatever the theologian said it meant, wives treated it as their party. Recovery, institutionalized, maternity leave, enforced by custom in the 16th century. Where does the death sentence myth come from then? From real things, badly averaged. It comes from queens. Jane Seymour dead 12 days after bearing Edward VI in 1537. Catherine Parr dead of childbed fever in 1548. Elizabeth of York dead in childbed in 1503. Famous deaths endlessly retold, standing in for millions of unfamous survivals. It comes from the true and terrible infant mortality of the age. The babies died far, far more often than the mothers, and that grief was everywhere. And it comes from confusing the whole sweep of the past with its worst pockets. The lying in hospitals of later centuries, where doctors going straight from corpses to labouring women spread childbed fever with their own unwashed hands, and drove death rates to heights a Tudor midwife with her buttered fingers and boiled linen never saw. Read that again if you need to. There are real specific historical moments where the 16th century birth chamber, all female, small scale, obsessive about warmed clean cloth, was safer than the fashionable medicine that replaced it. You walk home through the grey Norwich dawn with your shawl pulled tight, bone-tired the way you're always tired after a birth, past the cathedral spire standing black against the lightening sky. Behind you, in that warm dark room, a girl 3 hours old is asleep in bands of clean linen, and her mother is asleep beside her, and in a month there will be cakes and ale after the churching, and you'll be there for that too. Some year, sooner than seems possible, you may hold that same girl's hand in another dark room. Chances are, real chances, parish register chances, you'll both walk out of it. That's lie number 9. Childbirth as a death sentence. The truth. A dangerous passage, feared and prepared for, that 98 women in 100 survived. Inside a female institution with licenses, linen, and a month of enforced rest. A system. Again. Always a system. Lie number 8. The lie goes like this. Tudor women never wash their hair. Not rarely. Never. Hair went under a cap at 14 and stayed there, greasing itself into a solid mass, until the day they buried her in it. Washing hair was considered dangerous, or sinful, or simply never occurred to anybody, and every braid you see in a portrait is hiding something you'd rather not touch. The light is what you'd notice first, if you were her. Low, gold, late afternoon light through the orchard, a Saturday in September of 1552, on a farm in Kent, with the apple smell coming sweet and cidery off the windfalls in the grass. You're the farmer's wife, 31 years old, and your hair is down. That alone would startle the caricaturists, because outside this yard almost nobody sees it. A married woman coifs her hair in public. That's modesty, and that's also, frankly, practicality. The coif is what keeps the smoke and dust of a working day out of it. But it's Saturday afternoon, the week's heavy work is behind you, tomorrow is church, and you're sitting on a stool by the kitchen door with a basin of warm water, doing what you do on fine Saturdays, washing your hair. The water was heated in the great kettle over the kitchen fire. Into it you've put a ladle of lye, and don't flinch at the word. Lye here isn't the industrial horror in your head, it's the household's all-purpose cleanser, water run through wood ashes, and every housewife in England knows how to make it and how to cut it weak or strong. Weak lye for hair. Strong for the buck tub, but that's another part of this story. Some weeks you use a washball instead, if there's one spared from the market. Soap worked up with rose water. But Ashley is free, and free matters on a farm. You lean over the basin, and your daughter pours, and the warm water goes through your scalp like a blessing, and you scrub with your fingertips, and the wheat comes out of it. Hearth smoke, tallow, hay dust, the ghost of the dairy. The rinse water goes grey. Nobody who watched that water change colour could believe the never-washed lie for one more minute. Then the second rinse, and this one has rosemary boiled into it, because rosemary makes the hair dark and glossy and sweet-smelling, and you know that because everybody knows that. It's in the herbals, it's in the recipe books. It passed from your mother to you the way it passed to her. The printed household books of this century, and the manuscript recipe collections gentlewomen kept and swapped like letters, are full of hair. Waters to wash it, rinses to brighten it, powders for it, treatments for scurf. That's their word for dandruff. And the fact that they had a word for dandruff and a shelf of remedies for it tells you exactly how much they were supposed to not care. You wring your hair out gently, wrap it in a linen cloth, and then sit in the last of the sun to dry it, combing it out slow. And the comb is the thing I want you to look at, because the comb is where this lie really dies. It's boxwood, double-sided, wide teeth on one side, fine on the other. And you know precisely what those fine teeth are for. And yes, we're going to say it plainly, because I promised to keep the grim parts. Lice. Lice were general in every rank of society, from the cottage to the court, and no honest telling of this century pretends otherwise. There are elegant ivory combs from this period, carved with lovers and roses, whose fine sides are spaced for nits. Andrew Boord, a physician whose Dietary of Health was printed in 1542, an actual bestseller of practical living, tells his readers plainly to keep their heads combed as part of the daily regimen, and the school books that taught boys Latin through everyday sentences have lines about combing the head in the morning. Combing wasn't vanity, it was the front line of a daily, unwinnable, never abandoned war. You part your daughter's hair section by section in the good light. Fine teeth close to the scalp. Wipe the comb on a cloth. Again, again. Patient as weeding. She did yours last week. Delousing was something women did for each other. Mothers for children. Sisters for sisters. An act of service so ordinary it barely got written down. But it got painted, and it got provided for. Comb makers made combs by the thousand, cheap bone ones for pennies, and they turn up in graves and shipwrecks and the silt of the Thames in numbers that only make sense if everybody owned one and used it constantly. When the Mary Rose went down in 1545, she went down full of sailors' wooden combs, many with the fine, neat teeth, some still with their little louse casualties caught between them. Ordinary working men carried them to sea. That's how deep in the culture the comb sat. So why does the never-washed myth feel so plausible? Partly because full immersion washing really was occasional rather than weekly. Heating that much water cost fuel and hours, and there were physicians who warned against wetting the head in cold weather, chills being genuinely dangerous in a world without antibiotics. You yourself wouldn't do this in January. You'd comb through with a dry powder of herbs instead. Orris root dried rose, which is to say, dry shampoo, in 1552. Partly because the coif hides the evidence. Centuries of portraits of women in caps, and we assumed the worst about what was under them. And partly because it flatters us. Every generation likes to believe hygiene was invented the year they were born. But sit in this September light a moment longer. The basin, the weak lie, The rosemary rinse, the linen towel, the boxwood comb, the daughter's turn next week. The system again. Not our system. Slower, harder won, fought with ash and herbs instead of bottles. But a system worked at every week by women who liked their hair, thank you very much, and meant to keep it. Your hair dries in the orchard light, and it smells of rosemary, and tomorrow in church it will sit clean and hidden under the good linen coif, with the lace edge that you keep for Sundays, and no one will see it but you, and you will know. That's lie number 8. Never washed, never cared. The truth? Washed in season, rinsed with rosemary, powdered in winter, and combed, with tools they were buried with. Lie number 7. The lie goes like this. There was no soap. Simple as that. Soap hadn't been invented, or hadn't reached England, or was some exotic curiosity locked in apothecaries' cabinets, and nobody ordinary ever touched a bar of it. Whatever Tudor people did about dirt, they did it without soap because there wasn't any. The smell finds you before you're even properly through the yard gate. Hot fat wood ash, and that sharp throat-catching alkali reek that lives in your husband's clothes, your kitchen, your dreams. You're a soap boiler's wife in Bristol in the spring of 1588, and you have been married to this smell for 11 years. Your husband is a soap maker, a soaper, the old records call the trade, and Bristol records have called it that for more than 300 years already because this city was making soap in the 12th century. Read that again, slowly, and then hold it up next to the lie. When your husband's guild ancestors were boiling soap in Bristol, the Tudors were 3 centuries short of existing. Soap-making in England is not new. Soap-making in England is old enough that its street names are old. You cross the yard past the ash house, where the barrels of wood ash stand for steeping, and past the great leaded coppers where the week's batch is coming to temperature, grey and volcanic, blooping like porridge from hell. Your husband's apprentice stirring with a paddle as long as an oar and sweating through his shirt at 8 in the morning. Fat and lye, cooked and salted and settled and cooked again. What comes out is Bristol grey soap. Soft, greyish, honest stuff, sold by the firkin, the small barrel, to households up and down the West Country and to the laundresses of half the city. There's a coarser black soap, cheaper still, for the roughest scrubbing. And there's white Castile, the fine hard olive oil soap that comes in with the Spanish and Mediterranean trade, which sells at several times the price and which the mercers' wives buy for their faces. 3 grades, a market, price points, import competition. This, remember, is the thing that supposedly didn't exist. You keep the accounts because you can cipher and your husband famously cannot, and the accounts are where the no-soap lie comes to die a second death. Soap appears in household account books all over Tudor England, bought steadily in quantity, alongside candles and salt, because soap, candles and salt are all in the same family of goods, unglamorous, essential, always running out. The household books of great houses record it by the dozen pounds for the laundry. The port books record it coming in and going out. And in the century after you, the trade will be big enough that the Crown itself will scheme to tax and monopolise it. Governments do not build monopolies on things nobody uses. That's lie number 7's first half dead. Soap existed, graded, priced, gilded, taxed. But the lie has a second half, that even if soap existed, ordinary washing didn't use it, and that half dies in your own washhouse. So step in there with me for a moment before we let this one go. Because the everyday genius of Tudor cleaning wasn't the soap bar anyway. It was the buck. Bucking is the great laundry. Household linen layered in the tall wooden tub, the buck tub, and lye poured through it, again and again, hot, drawn off at the tap at the bottom, reheated, poured again, hours of it, the lye cutting the grease and lifting the grey until the linen comes out ready for rinsing and for spreading in the sun. 'Cause sunlight bleaches linen white, and every housewife in England uses the light itself as a tool. Soap for the collars and cuffs and the worse spots, lye and sunshine for the load. It is slow, punishing, skilled work. Laundresses' hands were famous, cracked and swollen. Lye finds every cut you have, and I promised not to prettify that, so don't let me. Wash day started before dawn, and women were paid pennies for labour that would flatten most of us by noon. But it worked. It got linen clean, genuinely clean, clean enough that whiteness of linen was the single most legible mark of a well-kept household in the entire visual language of the age. Your husband comes in from the yard smelling like the trade, kisses you anyway. You've long stopped minding. It's the smell of a good business in a good year, though you'll remember this particular spring for other reasons. The harbour is loud with refitting, and by August all England will be lighting beacons and talking of the Armada, and soap will go on being boiled straight through the national emergency, because dirt does not observe politics. That's lie number 7. No soap. The truth? A 3-century-old English industry, 3 grades on the market, import competition from Castile, account books greasy with it, and behind it all the buck tub and the lye, the real engine of clean, run on ash, sunlight, and women's ruined, capable hands. Lie number 6. The lie goes like this. Menstrual hygiene did not exist. Tudor women did nothing, used nothing, had nothing. The subject was so shameful and the people so primitive that women simply bled into their clothes and carried on month after month for 35 years of their lives, and nobody ever managed anything better than endurance. Cold, first, before thought, before light, the cold of a stone-flagged dairy floor coming up through your wooden pattens at 5 in the morning, and the ache low in your back that told you before you were even properly awake what day it was. You're a dairymaid on a manor farm in Essex in 1565, 19 years old, and your terms have come. That's the decent word for it in your world. Your terms, your courses, or the old phrase, your flowers, which sounds strange and almost sweet to modern ears and appears matter-of-fact as weather in the medical books of the day. And because you knew your reckoning, women tracked their cycles, midwives asked about them, physicians' casebooks noted them. The reckoning of terms was ordinary household arithmetic. You were not caught out. Last night before bed, you took your clouts from the bottom of your coffer. Clouts. Just the plain word for cloths. Linen rags, and in your case, like most, rags with a history. Cut down from a smock that finally wore through at the shoulders last year, hemmed at the edges in an evening by the fire, washed, boiled, dried, folded, kept. Softest linen there is, old linen, washed 1,000 times. You fold a clout into a pad and it goes where you'd expect, held by a cloth girdle about your hips, and you go to work because the cows do not observe your calendar. Through the morning milking, your forehead against a warm flank, the rhythmic hiss of milk into the pail, you're aware of it the way women have been aware of it forever. And at midday you change it. Rinse the used one in the cold trough behind the laundry where such things are rinsed, and drop it in the small covered pail that you and the other 2 maids keep, discreetly for the wash. They soak. They get boiled with lye like everything else. They come back to your coffer white. The linen system, and you'll hear much more about the linen system before this night is over, did not stop at the visible. Now I owe you the honesty I promised at the start, so here it is, plainly. This is the thinnest documented corner of tonight's story, and I will not pretend otherwise. Tudor women did not write about their terms, and Tudor men mostly wouldn't, and so the record is a scatter, not a shelf. But a scatter is not nothing, and follow what the scatter shows. The words existed and were used without panic. Terms, courses, flowers, in the printed midwifery and physic books of the century, which discuss bringing on suppressed courses, easing painful ones, reckoning conception by them. A subject with a vocabulary and a pharmacy is not a subject that does not exist. The cloth existed in abundance. Linen rag was the single most recycled material in the country, the end of every garment's life, and households were full of exactly the soft, absorbent, boilable cloth the purpose demands. Laundry existed, as we've seen, as a massive, organised, weekly female institution perfectly capable of handling it, and personal linens were washed within an all-female labour system where no man's embarrassment ever needed consulting. And when the record does speak, it speaks of cloths. Later centuries, with better-kept private papers, show women's rags and clouts as the standard answer, and there is no reason on earth to think their grandmothers, owning the same linen and the same wash days, did worse. What we don't have is a Tudor woman describing her own practice in her own hand. That page was never written or never kept, and where the document ends I'll say so, and stop. But between doing nothing and leaving no writing, there is all the difference in the world. The absence is in the archive, not in the practice. And where did the nothing existed lie come from? From that very silence, read with contempt instead of care. From the assumption that what respectable centuries didn't discuss, earlier centuries didn't do. And honestly, from the fact that this history belonged to women who owned no printing presses. The lie about the clouts is really a lie about who gets believed when they leave no paper. It takes women's discretion and resells it as women's ignorance. And of all tonight's 10, that trick might be the one that should make you angriest. Evening, and the second milking done, and you sit on the bench outside the dairy with the other maids while the light goes, your back still aching, and the eldest of you, 40, a widow back in service, tells the young ones, as somebody told her, which herbs ease the gripes. A posset with mugwort, a warm stone wrapped in flannel against the belly. The warm stone. 4.5 centuries between her and you, and on the difficult nights you reach for the same thing, warmed differently. Some knowledge never needed a book. It went hand to hand, woman to woman, an unbroken relay that the archive never saw, and the caricature never imagined. That's lie number 6. Nothing existed. The truth. Words, reckonings, clouts, girdles, cold water rinses, boiling days, herbs, warm stones, a managed, private, competent practice, running quietly under the visible world, documented at its edges and bounded in the middle, only by the silence of women nobody asked to write. Lie number 5. The lie goes like this. Tudor people knew they stank, and their entire response was perfume. No washing, no cleaning, just scent dumped on top of filth. The pomander, the nosegay, the rose water, all of it one giant air freshener sprayed over a century that never once opened a window or lifted a mop. Green. The whole long gallery smells green, cut grass and almonds and honey, because you have been strewing since 7 this morning and your knees know it. You're a chamberwoman in a gentry household in Surrey, in June of 1585, and today the house changes its rushes, not the filthy ancient floor rushes of legend, lying undisturbed for a generation over bones and spilled ale. That squalor was described memorably by the scholar Erasmus in a letter written back in the 1520s, complaining about the worst English floors he'd seen, and his complaint gets quoted at you as if it were a description of every floor in every English house forever after. It wasn't even meant as that. It was a foreigner's grumble about bad housekeeping, and the very fact that he framed it as bad housekeeping tells you good housekeeping existed, and everyone knew the difference. In this house, the old rushes come up. You've spent the morning on your knees rolling them, and the underlayer dust rises and makes you sneeze, and out they go to the midden. The boards beneath get swept bare and scrubbed where they need it, and then the new strewing goes down. Fresh rushes, and over them the strewing herbs, and this is where the green smell comes from. Meadowsweet above all, creamy almond honey meadowsweet, armfuls of it up from the water meadows, and the herbalist John Gerard will shortly put into print what every housewife already knows, that Queen Elizabeth herself loves meadowsweet strewn in her chambers above all other herbs for the excellence of its smell. Sweet flag if you can get it, lavender, Santolina against moths in the presses. A floor, in other words, that is not a garbage layer but a surface with a maintenance schedule, swept, changed, rescented on a calendar by paid hands. Yours. And the perfume instead of washing lye dies right there on the gallery floor, because look at what your day actually is. The scent isn't instead of cleaning. The scent is the final coat of paint on top of cleaning. Underneath today's strewing sits the sweeping, the scrubbing, the beating of hangings out the windows, dust flying off the tapestries in the June light like smoke, the airing of the great beds, feather mattresses hauled to the sun, because sun and air are medicine for bedding, and every housekeeping text of the age says so. Underneath the rose water in the ewer sits the ewer itself, and the basin, and the daily washing of hands and faces that the basin exists for. Underneath the lady's pomander, that little pierced ball of ambergris and spices she carries at her girdle, sits the buck house down by the yard, where this household's mountain of linen is boiled white week upon week by 3 laundresses whose wages are in the account book with everything else. Perfume was one-line item. The account books, and this is the zoom out, so look with me, show the whole invoice. Wages for laundresses, soap by the firkin, ashes for lye, rushes by the cartload, brooms by the dozen, herbs for the still room. A household of this size ran what can only be called a sanitation department. Female staffed, yearly budgeted, and the papers of families like the Peters of Ingatstone Hall in Essex. Accounts kept in beautiful detail from the 1550s. Let you read it line by line to this day. You cannot find the century that only perfumed. What you find is the century that scrubbed, boiled, swept, aired, strewed, and then perfumed, in that order. But keep the true part, because there is a true part, and it's stranger and better than the lie. They didn't scent their world just for pleasure. They scented it because they believed smell itself could kill. Bad air, miasma, was the reigning medical theory of disease. Corruption entered the body on foul vapours, and therefore a sweet-smelling room wasn't vanity, it was armour. When plague came, and in this century it kept coming, the response was fumigation. Juniper and rosemary burned in chambers, vinegar on the doorposts, herbs in the streets. Wrong theory, wrong mechanism. But watch what the wrong theory made them do. Clear the dunghills, empty the pits, scour the streets, air the rooms, boil the linen, burn the bedding of the sick. The fear of stench made them enemies of stench, and enemies of stench, whatever their theory, end up cleaner. A society that truly didn't care how things smelled would never have invented a medicine of smells. By evening the gallery is finished and you stand at the far end with your back complaining and your hands smelling of meadowsweet, and the low sun comes through the west windows and lies along the fresh strewing, and the whole 100 feet of it breathes like a hayfield. Tomorrow the family will walk it and never once think of you, which is in its way the sign of work done right. That's lie number 5. Perfume and nothing else. The truth? Perfume is the top layer of a deep stack, sweeping, scrubbing, boiling, airing, strewing, run on real wages and written into real account books by a century that feared bad smells so much it cleaned like its life depended on it. Because it believed, quite literally, that it did. Lie number 4. The lie goes like this. Everyone in Tudor England had black rotten teeth. Everyone. Open any mouth from the queens to the milkmaids, and you'd find the same brown ruin. Teeth simply rotted universally from childhood, because nobody cleaned them and nobody could, and a full set of sound teeth in an adult was as rare as a unicorn. The taste of salt and sage. First thing, before the taste of anything else. That's how this one begins. You're a market woman in London in the autumn of 1598, 40 years old, up before light in your rented room in Southwark, and the first thing you do after the basin, face, hands, neck, the daily wash we'll get to properly before this night is done, is take your toothcloth from its nail, a strip of linen, rough weave, kept for nothing else. You dip it in water, rub it in the little dish where you keep salt mixed with dried sage rubbed to powder, and you scrub your teeth with your finger wrapped in the cloth, front and back, the way your mother taught you in the 1560s, the way her mother taught her when Henry VIII was on the throne. Then a swill of water spat out the window into the yard. All right, the caricature can keep that little detail, we're not saints tonight, and your mouth tastes of sage and salt and morning. The physic books of your century are full of this. Toothcloths, powders of sage and salt, of rosemary ash, of pumice for them that can afford it. Warnings against powders too harsh, which strip the teeth. They knew abrasion was a danger. Think about what that implies about how much scrubbing was going on. There are toothpicks of wood and quill in every pocket in England, and among the fine folk, toothpicks of silver and gold worn on chains given as New Year's gifts at court. The Queen has been given jewelled toothpicks. They're in the gift rolls, and a society that engraves its dental tools is not a society that had abandoned its teeth. Now you go to work, and work is where the evidence walks past you all day. So watch it with me. You keep a stall in the fruit market by the bridge foot, and from dawn to dusk London's mouths come to you and open, talking, laughing, haggling, biting into your apples to test them, which you'd stop if you could. And here is what 4 decades at this stall have taught you, without your ever once thinking of it as data. The porters, the watermen, the carters, the servant girls, country-fed bread and cheese and pottage people, mostly have their teeth worn, yes. A working jaw by 40 has ground its teeth down on stone-milled bread, because there's always grit in the flour and the grit files the teeth flat, and that's real, and we'll keep it. Gaps, yes. Teeth were lost to age and accident in the tooth drawer, but rows of sound, strong workaday teeth in mouth after mouth after mouth. And then, once or twice a day, a different kind of customer comes to the stall. A silk-gowned merchant's wife, a gallant with a pearl in his ear, someone from the world where sugar lives. And when that kind of mouth opens, as often as not, there it is. the blackening, the rot along the gum line, the sweet wrong smell. You've seen it so many times you could sort London by its teeth. The poor have white ones going flat, the rich have fine clothes and dye in mouths. The caricature has it not just wrong, but exactly backwards. Because here is the arithmetic of it, and this is a story about money, like most true stories. Sugar in Tudor England is an import and a luxury. It arrives in tall, hard loaves, wrapped like treasure, and it is priced like treasure. Pennies the ounce when a labourer's whole day earns pennies. There were years in this century when a pound of sugar cost more than a labourer earned in a day, sometimes several days. At your stall, honey is the sweetness ordinary people know, and even honey is for feast days. The daily diet of the poor, coarse bread, cheese, pottage, ale, is many hard things, but it is a diet a tooth can survive. The rich, meanwhile, have discovered sugar the way every society discovers sugar, helplessly. Banquet courses of marchpane and sugar plate, suckets and comfits, sugar in wine, sugar on meat, sugar wrought into castles and beasts for the table. And their teeth are paying sugar's bill, and everyone can see it, and nobody can stop. Right at the top of the pyramid stands the proof, and she wears a crown. This very year, 1598, a German traveller named Paul Hentzner watched Queen Elizabeth, old and magnificent, pass through her palace at Greenwich, and wrote down what he saw with a foreigner's tactlessness. Her stately bearing, her jewels, and her teeth black. And then he added the sentence that should have strangled this lie in its cradle 400 years ago, a defect, he wrote, to which the English seem subject from their too great use of sugar. Read it again. The eyewitness who gave us the most famous rotten teeth in English history diagnosed them, on the spot correctly, as a disease of wealth. Black teeth were what too much money looked like. There were even those at the fine end of society, travellers claimed, who saw blackened teeth as almost a mark of status. Proof you could afford the sugar that did it. The milkmaid's white smile and the great lady's dark one were both proverbs in the making, and the proverbs remembered what the caricature forgot. And when historians stopped repeating and started digging, this is the zoom out. The ground agreed with you and your stall. Archaeologists who study medieval and Tudor skeletons find tooth decay at rates modern dentists would hardly believe. In many burial populations, only a small fraction of teeth show cavities at all. Worn? Yes. Lost with age? Yes. Abscesses when things went wrong. And when they went wrong, they could kill. And that stays in. A bad tooth in a world without antibiotics was a genuine danger, and the tooth drawer at the fair with his pincers and his stool and his crowd of gawpers was a place of real screaming and real relief. Their theory was wrong, too, and the wrongness stays in. Most of Europe, following books far older than England, believed toothache was caused by a toothworm gnawing within, and remedies meant to kill the worm range from henbane smoke to charms. Wrong theory, real care. You've heard that pattern already tonight, and you'll hear it again. But caries, the sugar disease, the universal blackening of the lie, it arrives in the record like a tide you can date. It rises among the Tudor rich exactly when sugar does. It floods the whole population 2 centuries later, when slave-grown sugar gets cheap enough for everyone's tea. The truly rotten mouths of English history belong mostly to the Georgians and the Victorians, the very centuries that invented the sneer at Tudor teeth. The caricature, it turns out, was a confession. Evening, and you're closing the stall, stacking the empty baskets, and a boy buys the last bruised apples for a halfpenny and eats one on the spot. loudly with the whole white machinery of his 16-year-old teeth, and you tell him to mind the bridge and get home before dark because you're 40 and you tell boys things now. You walk home across to Suffolk against the last light, tongue running over your own teeth the way tongues do. 2 gone on the left side, the rest holding, sage and salt twice a day and God willing. Behind you in the great houses upriver, the banquet courses are going in, sugar castles and candied violets under the candlelight, and the finest mouths in England are quietly, expensively dying, and nobody at those tables would trade places with you. That's lie number 4. Everyone's teeth were black and rotten. The truth, black teeth were a rich man's disease with a queen for its poster and sugar for its cause, named as such by an eyewitness in 1598. While under the caricature, millions of ordinary mouths did what mouths with toothcloth, salt, sage, and no sugar money do, which is mostly worn and gapped and imperfect, endure. Lie number 3. The lie goes like this. And you have heard this one. Everyone has heard this one. It may be the single most quoted sentence in the entire mythology of the unwashed past. Queen Elizabeth I took a bath once a month, whether she needed it or not. It gets delivered with a chuckle, in documentaries, in classrooms, in pub quizzes, always with that little pause before the punchline, and it carries a whole world on its back. If the Queen of England, the richest and most pampered woman in the realm, bathed 12 times a year and thought herself heroic for it, then what hope for anybody below her? The quote is the keystone of the filthy Tudor arch. Pull it and watch what falls. So let's pull it. And to pull it properly, you need to carry water. You're a servant of the Queen's chamber at Windsor Castle in the winter of 1592. One of the women below the great ladies, the ones who fetch and warm and fold, whose names appear in wage lists and nowhere else. And the passage you're walking is stone and cold and long, and the cans of hot water you're carrying are heavy enough to pull your shoulders out of their sockets by the 10th trip. Because the Queen is bathing today, and a Queen's bath is not a tub dragged to a fire, not here, not anymore. Windsor has a bathhouse, a purpose-built bathing room in the royal lodgings, and travellers who were shown through the castle in these years wrote home about it, amazed, describing rooms where the water came down as if by artifice, a marvel of plumbing and show. Whitehall has its bathing rooms too, with heated water brought through pipes and a ceiling, one visitor swore, set with mirror glass. Hampton Court has had piped water since King Henry's day. Spring water carried miles under the Thames itself in lead conduits. Feeding, among other things, a bathroom, a real one, with taps, hot and cold, filling a round wooden tub beside a fire, and that was installed for Henry VIII in the 1520s and 30s. Hold that in your head. The dynasty of the once-a-month joke built bathrooms the way it built tennis courts, as a matter of royal course. You do not lay lead pipe under a river for a woman who bathes under protest. The bathing room, when you finally get there with your cans, is the warmest room you enter all winter. That's the point of it. The whole art of safe bathing by the medicine of the day is warmth before, during, and after. Because the theory holds that hot water opens the pores and lets the dangerous airs in, so you seal the room, you warm the linen, you keep the fire high. The tub is lined with soft linen sheets, so no wood ever touches royal skin. The water goes in can by can, your arms, your morning, scented from the still room, rose water, herbs. There will be fine Castile soap. There will be warmed towels, and a warmed smock, and her women to dry her, and the fire built up, and no draught allowed within 3 doors of the whole proceeding. Afterward the room smells like summer in the middle of winter. and you carry the water back out again, cooler and greyer, can by can, and your back files its usual complaint, and somewhere above you the most powerful woman in England is dry, warm, scented, and clean, and you had better believe it took a village. Now. The famous quote, "Here is what an honest reckoning finds when it goes looking, and I give it to you exactly as the record stands. No one wrote it down in her lifetime. No courtier, no ambassador, no traveller, no enemy. And she had enemies who catalogued everything from her temper to her teeth. None of them reports the Queen bathing monthly, and none of them anywhere gives us whether she needed it or not. The sentence has no source. It surfaces centuries after her death, unattached, undated, a joke in search of a victim, and it has been pinned at various times to Elizabeth, to other monarchs, to whole centuries, always with the same smirk and never with a citation. That phrasing, whether she needs it or no, is a Victorian-flavoured punchline, and what it preserves is not a fact about Elizabeth, but a later age's need to feel superior to her. I promised you, at the start of tonight, that when a famous quote turned out to be sourceless, I would say so plainly instead of repeating it with a wink. This is that moment. The most famous fact about Tudor hygiene is not a fact. It is a joke with a crown put on it. What do the real sources show? A queen fastidious to the point of legend. Contemporaries describe her obsession with the cleanliness of her person and her rooms. She was known to be intolerant of bad smells around her, quick to banish a courtier whose boots or breath offended. The court joke ran that her nose was the sharpest instrument of state. Her New Year's gift rolls glitter with washing equipment, basins and ewers of silver and gilt, perfumed gloves, pomanders, the apparatus of a woman attended, washed and scented daily. Daily, because that is the true rhythm underneath all of this, for her and in humbler metal for her kingdom. The full bath was an event. The daily wash was the routine. Basin, ewer, cloth, face, hands, neck, teeth, morning after morning after morning, with the body rubbed down with linen and the smock changed clean. By the standards of her own medicine, frequent full immersion was thought genuinely risky. Pause, airs, chills, all that machinery of Galen. So the bath was deployed like a ceremony, and the wash did the daily work. If you must have a sentence for the pub quiz, make it this one. Elizabeth bathed more often than her doctors liked, washed more often than her legend allows, and said nothing whatever about needing it or not. And one more witness, because she deserves the last word over her own bath water. Her godson, Sir John Harrington, the same wit who gave the world the flush toilet in 1596, built his water closet with the Queen in mind, and the tradition runs that she had one installed at Richmond and was pleased with it. Whatever the exact truth of the Richmond machine, the picture assembles itself from a dozen such pieces: bathhouses at 3 palaces, pipes under a river, a court terrorised by the royal nose, a flush toilet dedicated more or less to her plumbing-minded approval. Set that picture beside the once-a-month joke, and the joke does not survive the comparison. It was never meant to survive comparison. It was meant to be repeated where no comparison could reach it. You, meanwhile, the woman with the cans, will wash tonight as you do every night, at a basin in a shared chamber, face and hands and neck, the water your own arms carried, because that is the version of the system your wages buy. And here is the quiet thing you know that the joke-tellers 4 centuries on will not. The difference between you and the Queen was never washed against unwashed. It was silver against pewter, piped against carried, Castile against grey soap, daily ceremony against daily habit. The whole kingdom, top to bottom, ran on the same grammar of clean, basin, linen, change your smock, conjugated in different metals. Nobody in this castle, from the throne to the scullery, would have understood the joke about needing it or not. You'd have had to explain it to them. And then, being Tudors, they'd have asked you for your sauce. That's lie number 3. Once a month, whether she needed it or not. The truth. A sauceless punchline pinned on a queen with 3 bathhouses, piped water, a legendary nose and a daily wash. Invented by later centuries, repeated because it flatters us, and dead the moment anyone asks where it's written. Lie number 2. The lie goes like this. Everyone stank, and nobody cared. This is the deep lie under half the others. Not a claim about equipment or technique, but a claim about the people themselves. It says the Tudor nose was dead. It says they lived in reek the way fish live in water, incapable of noticing, incapable of minding, and that all our talk of soap and lye and strewing herbs is beside the point, because the crucial thing, the wanting things clean, simply wasn't in them. It is the cruelest of the 10 when you think about it, because it doesn't accuse them of lacking plumbing. It accuses them of lacking standards. And it is the one lie tonight, that their own institutions rise up out of the archive and refute in their own voices, on the record, under oath. Voices, then. This one begins with voices, a room packed with them. You're an alewife in Stratford-upon-Avon, in October of 1577, standing in the guild hall with half the borough around you, because today is a law day. The court-leet, the town's own court, where the jury of your neighbours presents everything that has gone wrong in the streets of Stratford since the last law day. And you are here, if you're honest, partly because attendance is expected, and partly because this is the best entertainment the autumn offers. The room smells of wet wool and wood smoke and too many people. The rain has been at the town all week. The gutters are running, and the mud outside is the particular October mud that sucks the pattern right off your foot. The bailiff calls for order. The jurors, a butcher, a draper, men you've sold ale to for 20 years, stand up one by one with the list. And what is the list? Say it with the caricature in your head, and then listen to what a real Tudor town in its own real records actually spent its court days on. Dunghills. Dunghills laid in the street where no dunghill ought to be. Muck heaps kept too long by the doors of named men, presented by name, fined by the pence. Ditches unscoured so the water stands and stinks. Gutters stopped. Pigs, always pigs, wandering unringed, rooting in the refuse before the very door of the church. A householder who has let his privy drain toward his neighbour's well, and the jury's language about that man is not resigned, it is furious. Fine after fine after fine. A whole afternoon of a town scolding itself street by street, entered into the record by a clerk whose ink survives to this day. This happens every year. It has happened every year for generations here and in every borough in England. The leet rolls and wardmote presentments of the century are, page for page, one of the largest single bodies of evidence we have about ordinary Tudor life, and what they are about, overwhelmingly, is who made a mess, and how fast he'll pay for it. And you know the most famous entry of the kind yourself, though you don't know it's famous. In this town, it's just a thing that happened. 25 years back, in 1552, the court fined a young glover of Henley Street 12 pence for keeping a muck heap in the open street, instead of carting it to the common dunghill at the town's end. 12 pence. a day's wage and more for a pile of refuse in the wrong place. The glover's name was John Shakespeare. His son William is 13 years old this autumn at the grammar school not 200 paces from where you're standing, and in time the whole world will read the father's fine as a footnote to the son, but read it tonight the other way, the way it was written. In a country where nobody supposedly cared about filth, a market town fined the poet's father a day's wages for one badly placed heap. That is caring. That is caring with a price schedule. The court moves on, and now it's the other kind of case, the kind the crowd really came for. The scolding matters, the defamations, neighbour against neighbour, and here the evidence gets stranger and better. Because listen to what Tudor people called each other when they wanted to wound. The church courts, the bawdy courts people call them, where slander and morals were tried, kept verbatim records of insults, thousands upon thousands of them, and alongside the accusations of unchastity that filled most dockets runs a steady stream of filth words: stinking knave, foul slut. And understand that word in its old sense. A slut was a woman who kept a dirty house. The sexual meaning came later. Lousy beggar, go home and wash. People sued over these words. Sued, hired proctors, called witnesses, swore oaths, because to be called dirty in front of the parish was an injury worth money and reputation. Now stand that fact next to the lie. In a world where everyone stank and nobody cared, stinking could not be an insult any more than breathing could. The insult only works. The lawsuit only makes sense. If cleanliness was a standard everyone was being measured against all the time, by every neighbour with a nose and an opinion. Every defamation suit over foul and lousy and slut is a notarized certificate that the standard existed. The Tudor nose was not dead. The Tudor nose was a magistrate. You walk home from the law day with your neighbour Joan in the wet dusk, the two of you picking your way on pattens, those wooden overshoes that lift you 2 inches above the mud, iron-ringed, clacking on the cobbles where there are cobbles, and there is no object in England more eloquent of this whole night than the pattern, an entire class of footwear invented, made, sold and worn for the sole purpose of keeping clean above the dirt. Joan is savouring the afternoon's finds like sweetmeats. She has feuded for years with a man presented for his gutter, and vindication has made her chatty. And her chat, if you listen to it with tonight's ears, is the lie dying its quietest death. She talks of who keeps their doorsteps swilled and who doesn't, whose linen on the hedge was grey and whose was white, who has let their pig into the church lane again, and whose house you can smell before you can see. The court downstairs, the gossip upstairs, 2 courts really, and the second one crueler, and both of them sitting, all century long, on exactly the thing the lie says nobody sat on. Standards, enforced, gossiped, priced, appealed. A society that didn't care built no such machinery. This one built it in duplicate. But keep the true part, because as always there is one, and by now you know I won't hide it. The standards were fought for because the dirt was real. The mud was real. The dunghills existed, or there'd have been nothing to fine. The towns did smell. Of wood smoke and horses and tanneries and yes, of people, in ways that would stagger a modern visitor for the first hour and vanish into background by the second, the way all ambient smells do and always have. Enforcement lagged behind ambition in Stratford exactly as it does in every town you've ever lived in. Read your own city's code violation docket sometime. They are the leet rolls with the spelling fixed. The difference between them and us was never the wanting. It was the horsepower behind the wanting. They fought with brooms, carts, fines, and pigs' noses ringed by order of the jury, and we fight with sewers and diesel. Give them the sewers and they'd have used them. We know, because the moment any of it became possible, their descendants did. And when plague came near, this is the last turn of this one, and the darkest, and it stays. The caring sharpened into fear, and the fear into law. Orders would go out, streets to be scoured, dunghills carried away, sick houses shut and marked, bedding burned, fires of sweet wood lit at the doors. Wrong theory again. They were fighting the smell because they believed the smell was the killer, but the town that scrubbed hardest believed it was fighting for its life. Nobody cares about nothing. They cared the way you care about the thing you think is trying to kill you. That's lie number 2. Everyone stank and nobody cared. The truth. They cared so much they built courts for it. Fined the poet's father 12 pence over a muck heap, sued each other for the word stinking, invented shoes to float over the mud, and scoured their streets against death itself. The smell of the 16th century was real. So was the century-long, documented, litigated war against it. Lie number 1. And here it is, the biggest one. The lie all the other 9 grew out of, the root under the whole weed. Tudor people never washed. Full stop. Not their bodies, not really. Not in any way that counts. Whatever fuss they made with herbs and courts and combs, the bodies themselves went unwashed from christening to shroud, and everything else we've talked about tonight was decoration on top of a century of skin that never once felt water. I told you at the start you might catch yourself resisting when we got here, because this is the one that's been repeated at you the longest. It's in the school jokes, the tour guide patter, the confident dinner party fact. And the reason it has survived 400 years of evidence against it is actually simple and almost forgivable. It rests on one true observation, wrongly read. Tudor people rarely took baths. That part is real. Full immersion in a tub of hot water was for most people an occasional event. The fuel, the hauling, the hours, we've counted that cost all night. And from that single true fact, later centuries drew the conclusion that seemed obvious to them. Rarely bathed, therefore never clean, because by then bath had swallowed the whole meaning of washing. But the Tudors were not failing to run our system. They were running a different one, complete, coherent, daily. And to see it, you have to stop looking for the bathtub and start looking at the basin. And the linen. Above all, the linen. Cold water on your face in the half-dark. Begin there, where every day of the century began. You're a weaver's wife in Coventry, in March of 1556, 36 years old, and you're standing at the washstand in the corner of your chamber in the last grey before sunrise, and the water in the basin is cold enough to make you hiss, because the fire's not built up yet and you weren't going to wait. The basin is pewter. It was your mother's. It will be your daughter's. Basins and ewers walk down the generations in wills all over England, and when the appraisers come after a death to inventory a house, there they are in list after list, in pewter, in Latin, in silver as you climb the ranks. Basin and ewer, the equipment of daily washing, as standard in a Tudor chamber as a kettle in a modern kitchen. You bend over it and wash, face, ears, neck and hands to the wrists, working the cold water in, a sliver of grey soap on the worst of it, and the shock of it brings the day up in you like a struck spark. This is not your invention and not your virtue. It is what everyone does. It is what the books order. Andrew Board's regimen in print since 1542. Rise, wash face and hands, comb the head, clean the teeth. The manners books children learn by heart make mourning washing the mark of a person raised right. At dinner in any house with pretensions, a servant will bring basin, ewer and towel to the table so guests can wash their hands before meat, in front of each other ceremonially. Hand-washing as public performance. Because eating with unwashed hands marks you as something less than mannered. 100 years of etiquette texts, medical texts, school books, all drumming the same beat, and underneath them the humbler proof. The water your husband will fetch, the towel on its peg, worn thin in the middle from use. Daily use. That's the first floor of the system. The wash. Face, hands, neck, teeth. Every morning at a minimum, from the palace to this chamber, to houses far poorer than this one, where the basin is wood and the waters from the conduit, but the habit is the same habit. Then the second floor, and this is the one the caricature never found. The rub. Once or twice a week, by the fire when it's warm enough, water heated in the kettle, you strip to the waist and go over your body with a coarse linen cloth, wetted, wrung, worked hard, arms, back as far as you can reach, and your daughter does the rest. Everywhere sweat lives, and the cloth comes away grey, and your skin comes up pink and stinging clean, and then a dry cloth after, rubbing till you glow. The physicians have a whole doctrine of this. Rubbing the body with clean cloths carries off the filth of the skin, opens nothing dangerous, risks no chill worth fearing. It is their recommended everyday cleansing of the body entire, safer by their lights than soaking in hot water with your pores flung open to whatever the air is carrying. You can call it a sponge bath and be done. They called it rubbing and cleansing. Either way, the flesh under a Tudor smock was not the untouched wilderness of the joke. It was gone over, regularly, hard, with water, cloth and intent, in every household that owned a kettle and a rag, which is to say, in effect, every household. And now the third floor, the roof, the masterpiece. The part that isn't a lesser version of our system, but a genuinely different technology of clean, and the single most important thing I will tell you tonight, the linen. Everything you have ever seen a Tudor person wearing, in every portrait, every woodcut, the wool gown, the leather jerkin, the velvet if they had it, none of that touched skin. Between every Tudor body and every Tudor outer garment lay a layer of washable linen, the smock for women, the shirt for men, covering trunk and arms, changed and changed and changed. And in the medicine and common sense of the age, that layer was not underwear as we think of it. It was the washing machine. Linen, they understood. Drawers. It wicks sweat and grease off the skin continuously all day into itself. The body walks around being cleaned by its own clothing hour after hour, and then you take the dirty instrument off, boil it in the buck with lye till it's white, and put on a clean one, and the machine runs again. To shift your linen was to wash, in the fullest sense the century recognised. A clean shift was clean skin, and once you have seen that equation, theirs, not mine, it's explicit in their medical writing and implicit in every household account, the whole century turns right side up, and everything you've heard tonight clicks into place around it. Why, the whiteness of linen was the sovereign mark of decency. Why, collars and cuffs, the visible linen, blazed white in every portrait like an advertisement. Because visible linen was visible hygiene, worn where the whole street could audit it. Why, wills, real wills, proved in real courts by the thousand, bothered to bequeath smocks one by one, my best smock, my second best smock, 6 smocks to my daughter, because a stock of linen was a stock of cleanliness, Wealth you could wear against your skin, and a woman counting her smocks was counting how clean her family could afford to be. Why the laundress, not the bathhouse keeper, was the true hygiene professional of the age, and why Wash Day ate a full day of every housewife's week, and the buck tub stood in every yard. The Tudors poured the labour we pour into bathing bodies into boiling cloth instead. Same war, different weapon, and by their own logic they were not eccentric, they were correct. Given cold houses, hauled water, and a medicine that feared the open pore, the safest, most efficient route to a clean body was a relentless supply of boiled linen against the skin. It worked. It scaled from the Queen's Lawn smocks to a labourer's 2 hemp shirts. It was a system. It was the system. And the century that laughed at them for never washing was, at that very moment, wearing collars and cuffs for purely decorative reasons and boiling nothing. So stand in the Coventry chamber a while longer and watch the system run its Monday, 'cause today is wash day, and wash day is where all 3 floors meet. By full light you're in the yard, and the buck tub is set on its stand with the household's linen layered inside it. Smocks, shirts, sheets, towels, clouts, the tablecloth, your husband's collars, and the first lie is heating over the yard fire, and for the next many hours you and your neighbour's daughter, hired for the day at 2p and her dinner, will pour and draw and heat and pour, lie through linen over and over, the steam rising off the tub into the cold March air like the ghost of every meal and every night's sweat the cloth has carried since last wash. Your hands go red, then raw. The lie finds the crack by your thumbnail that never quite heals from winter, and you hiss and keep pouring, because that is the wage of white, and every woman in England pays it weekly. By afternoon the rinsed linen goes over the hedge and across the grass in the pale March sun. Whole meadows of England turn white on wash days, smocks spread on hawthorn, sheets pegged on lines, sunlight doing the final bleaching for free, and your yard smells of lye and cold linen and green bruised grass, which is the true perfume of Tudor cleanliness, whatever the pomander says. And at dusk you gather it in, stiff and sweet, and fold it into the press, and the machine is loaded for another week. Tonight your family sleeps in boiled sheets. Tomorrow they dress in boiled linen. If you could ask them, all of them, the whole century of them, whether they washed, they would look at you over the hedge of white laundry, hands stinging, and not even understand the question. Now the grim part of the biggest lie, because I promised, and because the biggest lie deserves the most honest reckoning of all. There is a reason the full bath got rarer as the century wore on, and it is not a comfortable one. England had public baths once. The stews, whole streets of them, most famously on the south bank of the Thames at Suffolk. A bathing culture inherited from the Middle Ages, steam and hot tubs and attendants. And in 1546, by royal proclamation, Henry VIII shut the Suffolk stews down, partly because they had long since become byward brothels as much as bathhouses. The word stews itself was sliding into meaning the other trade, and partly out of fear of the pox, the new syphilis that had been burning through Europe since the 1490s, and the old recurring fear of plague, both of which made shared water, shared rooms, shared skin seem deadly. And the physicians, as we've heard all night, backed the fear with theory. Hot water opens the pores. Opened pores let in corruption. In plague time, the standing advice was plainly do not bathe. So public bathing died in England, and the private hot soak became a rarer, warier thing. and for the next 2 centuries the bath itself was medically speaking under a cloud. That is all true, and it is the seed of truth the great lie grew from. But watch what it actually means. Bathing declined not because nobody cared about clean, but because they cared about staying alive on the best medical advice of their age. And the moment the bath became suspect, the whole weight of the culture shifted harder onto the other 2 floors of the system, the basin and the linen, the wash and the shift. The care never went anywhere. It just changed instruments. Fewer tubs, more smocks. Less soaking, more boiling. The demand for clean, measured in laundress hours and soap firkins and bequeathed smocks, went up across this century, not down. A falling bath count and a rising linen count are not a people abandoning hygiene. They are a people rerouting it. And so, the origin of the biggest lie. And it barely needs telling now because you can see the machinery from here. Later centuries, the ones with cheap coal, piped water, and eventually a fierce Victorian religion of the tub, looked back, found the rare Tudor bath, and read it with their own dictionary, in which washing and bathing had become the same word. They found the closed stews and the doctors warning against water, and stopped reading before the basin and the buck tub. They found Erasmus grumbling about one bad floor and made him a surveyor of the entire kingdom. They found a sourceless joke about a queen and gave it a crown and a microphone. Repeat for 10 generations. Add costume dramas with artfully blackened teeth, and you get the woman we started with tonight. The caricature, standing in her stiff, filthy dress in your imagination where a real woman used to be. The real one was standing at a cold basin before dawn. The real one had a comb in her apron and a rosemary rinse on Saturdays and 6 smocks in her will. The real one boiled her family's entire skin layer weekly with her own scalded hands and walked to church on Sunday in linen so white it shouted down the street that she was somebody. In the one language of clean her century spoke fluently and we forgot. That's lie number 1. They never washed. The truth, they washed every morning at the basin, rubbed their bodies clean with cloth and water, and wore their washing machine on their backs. A linen system boiled white week after week by the labour of women, running from the palace to the poorhouse, complete, coherent, and documented in every will, inventory and account book the century left behind. Rarely bathed, never dirty by their own law, and their own law, given their world, was right. And there they are. All 10, laid out in the dark, counted down and taken apart. The privies that were an industry, not a whole. The childbeds that 98 women in 100 rose from. The hair washed with rosemary and defended with boxwood teeth. The soap boiled in Bristol for 300 years before the first Tudor drew breath. The clouts managed in a privacy so complete it was mistaken centuries later for absence. The perfume that was the last coat over scrubbing, not the substitute for it. The black teeth that belonged to the rich and the sugar bowl, not the poor and the pale. The monthly bath that no one ever said. The stink that a whole architecture of courts and fines and gossip existed to fight. And the unwashed century that washed every single morning of its life. Notice before we let them go what every one of the 10 had in common. Not one of the lies was about evidence. Every one of them was about distance, about how easy it is, at 400 years' range, to mistake different for worse, to mistake other systems for no system, to mistake silence in the archive for emptiness in the life. The Tudors fought dirt with ash, linen, sunlight, quartz, and combs instead of with pipes and porcelain. And for that, the centuries that inherited the pipes told jokes about them at their own funerals. But the women in those 10 rooms were not waiting in filth for the future to invent the shower. They were up before dawn, running the system they had, well, on their own terms, by their own lights, and their lights, we keep finding, were better than their reputation. The joke was never really evidence of their dirt. It was evidence of our laziness. And now you know it. And you can never quite hear the joke the same way again. And that, the small, permanent change in what you can hear, is the only monument most of those women will ever get. So let the arguing be over now. The lies are counted, the case is closed, and the rest of tonight belongs to something slower. Because there is one more thing we haven't done with these 10 rooms, and it's the thing this channel exists to do. We've watched the women work. We haven't watched them stop. It's dark now, in all of them. Every room we visited tonight has arrived, in its own year, at its own nightfall, and nightfall in that England was not the half-lit humming thing you live in. When the light went, it went. So come back down the century one more time, slower now, no more arguments, no more evidence, just the ends of days. In London, in 1596, the merchant's wife off Cheapside is at her chamber window, with the candle already out, watching the lantern of the watch go swaying down the street like a slow firefly, hearing the watchman's feet and nothing else. Because the city that roared all day goes quiet at night, in a way its modern self never will. The curfew bell rang hours ago. Curfew, couvre-feu, cover fire, the oldest bedtime word there is. Rake the coals, cover them to sleep safe till morning, the whole city banking its fires like one great shared breath being held gently till dawn. Below her the shop is shuttered and barred. In the cellar the pit sits empty and sweet, or as near sweet as it gets for months to come. She counted the cost of the gong farmers into the ledger before the light failed, in her own hand, in the book that will outlive her. It was money well spent. She gets into bed beside her husband, who has not once in his life lain awake over any of this, and stretches her feet down into sheets that were boiled white in the yard of that very house, and is asleep before the watch comes back up the street. In Norwich, in 1571. The gossip who walked home at dawn has had her own long day since. There were still cows, there is always still something. But now she's abed, and through the wall she can hear her own children breathing, and somewhere 3 streets away, in that warm shuttered chamber, the new mother is sleeping in the middle of her month of lying in with the baby in the cradle at her elbow, and the midwife is home too, her fee in the pot on the shelf, her hands washed, her butter and her linen packed ready by the door because babies keep no calendar, and the next hard knock could come at any hour of any night. It doesn't come tonight. Tonight the whole parish, for once, sleeps through. In Kent, in 1552, the farmer's wife lies listening to the orchard. The wind has come up a little and the apples are dropping, one soft thud at a time into the grass, and each thud is a job for next week and a smell for right now, coming faint and sweet through the shutter gaps. Her hair is dry and braided loose for the night, smelling of rosemary when she turns on the bolster, and her daughter's is the same across the room, and the boxwood comb lies on the chest between them, like a small tool of a long war at truce till morning. In Bristol, in 1588, the soap boiler's wife has shut the ledger on a good week. Out in the yard the coppers are cooling, ticking softly as the metal contracts, the fire's drawn, the ash raked, and the smell of the trade lies over the house like a blanket she stopped noticing 11 years ago. Down the hill the harbour is quiet, the refitting ship standing black on blacker water, all the hammering done for the day. The great fear of that summer is still months off, and tonight is not for it. Tonight the account book balances, The apprentice snores in the loft like a saw. Her husband's shoulder is warm, and the batch, God willing, will set by Thursday. In Essex, in 1565, the dairymaid is asleep already. 19 and worked like a colt, she's asleep before the older women finish talking, with the warm stone at her back going slowly cool in its flannel, and the ache fading with it. The eldest of the maids, the widow, sits up a little longer on the edge of her bed, rubbing grease into her cracked hands by feel in the dark, hearing the byre settle, the beasts shifting their weight, a dog away over the fields answering another dog, and then not even that. In Surrey, in 1585, the long gallery lies empty in the moonlight, 100 feet of silvered floor breathing meadow, sweet into the dark for nobody. The whole green day's work of the chamber woman perfuming an audience of moonbeams. She's in the servants' garret under the roof, hands washed, knees ringing like struck bells, asleep in 2 minutes flat. The family walked her gallery before supper and never thought of her once, and the sign of work done right held all evening and will hold all year. In Southwark in 1598, the market woman sleeps behind a barred door with her day's takings in a box beneath the bed, and her tooth-cloth on its nail, and the bridge she crosses twice a day stands black over the running tide, its houses stacked and sleeping, its arches combing the river into white noise that half the parish uses for a lullaby, without ever once thinking of it as a mercy. Rich mouths and poor mouths, sugar and sage, all of them shut now, all of them even, love. At Windsor, in 1592, the water carrier's shoulders have stopped aching enough to let her sleep, in a shared bed in a shared chamber deep in the body of the castle, and far above her. Through how many yards of stone, the sharpest nose in England is asleep in boiled lawn smocks between boiled linen sheets, scented, guarded, alone. The bathing room stands dark and dry, fire out, tub covered, waiting some weeks for its next performance. On the coldest nights, the two of them, queen and carrier, are warmed by fires laid by the same hands, and sleep in the end the identical sleep. In Stratford, in 1577, the alewife's house smells of yeast and wet wool drying by the banked fire, and the last thing she hears is the rain coming back, sweeping in off the fields to rinse the town's gutters all night for free. The oldest scavenger there is, on no one's payroll, presented at no court. Somewhere up Henley Street a glover's household is dark, and a 13-year-old with his father's fine in his family's memory, and all the words of English waiting in his mouth, is asleep with school in the morning. The mud will be worse by then. The patterns stand ready by every door in town, and in Coventry, in 1556, the weaver's wife is last to bed in her house, the way she's last every wash day, because there's always one more fold, one more candle end to pinch, one more listen at the children's door. Her hands are burning gently from the lye. They'll be rough till Thursday, smooth by Sunday, rough again by next Monday night. The small tide of her own skin that she's long since stopped remarking. The press is full of white linen. The whole house this one night of the week smells of sun and ash and clean cloth. Her signature, invisible, on every sleeping body in it. She stands a moment in the dark of the stair, dead tired, taking a kind of inventory no appraiser will ever copy. 6 smocks, 4 sheets, the towels, the clouts, all boiled, all folded, all hers. And then she climbs up and lies down and lets go of the week. 10 rooms, 10 women, 1 century, all asleep. Listen to how quiet their world goes when it finally goes. No engines anywhere on earth. No wires humming in any wall. Rain on 10 different roofs. Fires banked under curfew in 10 different towns. and the only machines running anywhere in the kingdom are the rivers turning the mill wheels in the dark, grinding tomorrow's bread while everybody dreams. And the system they ran, the basin, the linen, the buck, the comb, did not sleep when they did. It turned with the year, the way everything in their world turned with the year. And if you want to feel the true shape of their clean, feel it as a calendar. In spring, the great washes, the winter's heavy linen brought out when the weather first held, the hedges of March and April suddenly white all over England on the good drying days, every housewife watching the sky like an admiral, because a wash caught by rain was a week's labour drowned. In summer the gathering, the strewing herbs cut in their seasons, meadow sweet from the wet meadows in June and July, lavender in high summer laid between the folded sheets in the press, so that all winter long a bed opened in December breathed out a ghost of July. The sunlight at its strongest doing its best bleaching, linen laid on grass for whole bright days, turned like hay, coming in at evening smelling of the entire sky. In autumn, the reckoning, soap and candles bought in for the dark months, ashes hoarded, the lye barrels filled, the apples in, the smoke smell coming back into everything as the fires lengthened, wash days shrinking to fit the shrinking light, and in winter, the holding on, washes small and rare and dried by the fire on cross poles, stiff shirts thawing in the heat like penitents, the deep cold making even the basin an act of small courage. You know it now, that first hiss of icy water on a January face. You've stood at that basin all night, and the whole system waiting, patient as the ground, for the light to come back and the hedges to go white again, year after year after year, a wheel of clean turning inside the wheel of the seasons, hands passing it round and round, and every turn of it done start to finish, by women whose names the wheel never kept. The women went one by one, the way everyone goes. The weaver's wife of Coventry, the gossip of Norwich, the alewife, the dairymaid, the carrier of cans, whoever they each really were, and they were each really someone, 100 times over. The century closed over them quietly, and we will not pretend to know their ends, because no one wrote their ends, and tonight of all nights we do not invent what no one wrote. But here is what can be said, and it is not small. The system outlived them all. Their daughters ran it, and their daughters' daughters, basin and buck and shift, through the death of the old queen in 1603, through new kings and wars and fires and plagues, barely changing, for another 200 years and more, women who never heard of any of tonight's 10 lies standing at the same tubs with the same stinging hands, until the day, far down the line, when the pipes finally came, and the coal-heated water, and the porcelain, and the whole ancient apparatus of ash and sunlight and boiled cloth, was set down at last, gently, like a tool at the end of a very long shift. The lies got invented on the far side of that handover, by people who'd never once carried the cans. Nobody who ever poured a buck believed them, and the paper outlived everything. That's the last quiet marvel of tonight, so hold it a moment before we let the century go. Every document we've leaned on in the dark tonight is real, and is, at this hour, asleep somewhere. The wills with their smocks counted one by one, proved in court by executors 4 centuries dead, lie boxed in county archives, acid-free and catalogued, in the dark of climate-controlled stacks. The leet rolls of Stratford with the Glovers 12p fine, the household books of Ingatestone with their soap and their laundresses' wages, the parish registers that let us count the mothers who lived, the bishop's registers with the midwives' oaths, Board's little book of 1542, Harrington's joke of 1596, Gerard's herbal with the Queen's meadow sweet, Hentzner's tactless diary, all of them, the whole cloud of witnesses, sleeping tonight in libraries and record offices from Norwich to California, waiting for the next pair of hands to call them as evidence. Somewhere tonight a conservator's humidifier hums over them. Somewhere tonight an archivist has gone home and left them in the dark, perfectly kept. The women could mostly not write, and the paper mostly was not theirs, but the ink they left in other people's books, the fines and fees and inventories and bequests, added up in the end to an alibi 400 years wide. It just needed reading. It always only needed reading. So that's what tonight was, when you step back from it. Not a tour, a retrial. 10 charges, 10 acquittals, and the evidence was theirs all along. Their own courts, their own account books, their own linen presses testifying across 4 centuries on their own behalf. And you were the jury lying still in the dark, which is the only jury box that Sentry can reach anymore. The verdict doesn't change anything for them. Verdicts this late never do. But it changes something for you. Because the next time someone tells you with that confident chuckle that people back then simply lived in filth and never noticed, and someone will, it may be years from now, at some table, in some passing joke, you will feel the whole night rise quietly in you. The cans in the cold corridor, the grey rinse water, the white hedges, the 12p fine, the 6 smocks in the will. You won't even have to argue. You'll just know, the way you know a road you've walked. That's what listening in the dark does. It moves whole centuries into the part of you that doesn't have to look things up. And now, truly, we can let them go. Let the archive doors close. Let the 10 rooms dim, one by one, in order the way we found them. The London Chamber, the Norwich Stair, the Kent Orchard, the Bristol Yard, the Essex Byre, the Surrey Gallery, the Suffolk Room, the Windsor Corridor, the Stratford Street, the Coventry Press full of folded white, each one going soft at the edges now, going small, like windows seen from a road at night as you walk away, until the whole 16th century is just a scatter of banked fire glow behind you in the dark, warm and orderly and clean enough. Clean enough. That was always the true standard, theirs and yours and everyone's who ever lived. Not spotless, never spotless. Clean enough by the daily work of your own 2 hands for the life you actually have. They met their standard. Most days so do you. It is a very old kind of victory, and it is enough. Because here is the thing you carry out of the 16th century tonight. The thing that follows you back up the 400 years to your own bed. You're still running their system. You think you aren't, but you are. Somewhere in your home right now there is a basket or a hamper or a chair. There's always a chair, holding the linen of your days, waiting for your own wash day, and when it comes you will do exactly what the weaver's wife did. Gather the cloth that has been quietly taking the dirt of your body all week, and boil it more or less in a machine that is only her buck tub with the pouring automated, and fold it warm. And feel that specific small rightness she felt at the top of the stair. The press is full, the household is clean, the week is closed. The smell of laundry dried in sunlight, which you love without ever wondering why, is the smell of hers. The clean sheets you slide into on the best night of the week, everyone's favourite night, the fresh sheets night, are her boiled sheets, her one luxury, arrived intact across 4 centuries with the pleasure not even slightly diminished. You wash your face in the morning at a basin with a drain in it. You clean your teeth at night with sage and salt refined into paste. You comb, you rinse, you air the room, you take out the bins the gong farmer's way, on the appointed night before the cart comes. Different metals, different horsepower, the same grammar. Some things don't change, and the ones that don't change are never the machines. They're the wants. Warm, fed, clean, safe, rested. 16th century, 21st century, every century in the file. The same 5 wants, passed down the generations along with the basins and the recipes, hand to hand, mother to daughter, all the way from their dark to yours. And their dark is worth borrowing here at the end, because they were better at this next part than we are. Falling asleep was the one job their world made easier than yours. No screen ever followed them to bed. No lit rectangle, no feed. No reason to be awake past the fire. When the curfew bell rang and the coals went under their cover, the day was simply over. Not paused, not minimised, over. And the night came down like the lid of the linen press, and there was nothing to do in it but the oldest things. Listen, warm up, drift. So do what they did. You've earned it. You've done a full day's work tonight. You retried an entire century and won. Let the bell ring for you too. Let the day be over, not paused. Over. Whatever is unfinished will keep till morning. That was the whole wisdom of the curfew. The fire isn't out, it's banked. The work isn't gone, it's covered. Everything you are keeping alive will still be alive at dawn, glowing under the ash right where you left it. Nothing needs you now. For the next hours, nothing at all needs you. That was true for her on the stair in Coventry, dead tired, hands stinging, house asleep, and it is true for you right now, exactly where you lie. So settle the way they settled. Feel the weight of the covers the way she felt the coverlet, that same downward permission. The day's load taken off your standing bones and handed to the bed, which never drops it. Feel how your body is already doing the banking of its own fires, the breathing slowing without being asked, the warmth pooling under the blanket the way heat pools under raked ash, everything in you that blazed all day settling down to a low, safe, keeping glow that will hold till morning without your tending it. You are the fire and the keeper of the fire, and the keeping happens by itself. It always has. 400 years of sleepers have proved it night after night after night. The letting go works. It worked for women with lie burns and worked hands in houses with no locks worth the name. It worked through plague years and Armada summers. It worked on wash day nights and childbed nights, and the ordinary nights that outnumbered everything. The tide of ordinary nights this whole story floated on. It will work tonight. It is working already. You can hear it working in the slow count of your own breath. Listen to your room the way you listen to theirs. Every room tonight had its night sound, and yours has one too. The small tick of it cooling, the faint traffic where their rain was, the house settling its old bones, your own heart doing its patient watchman's rounds, lantern swinging. All's well, all's well. Rooms have sounded like this more or less for as long as there have been rooms. Someone lying still in the dark, listening to the little sounds of shelter holding and being held. The merchant's wife heard the watch and slept. The farm wife heard the apples drop and slept. The alewife heard the rain begin and slept. 10 women, 10 rooms, 10 night sounds, and every one of them let the sound carry them down, because that is what the sounds of a safe room are for, and your room is safe, and its sounds are carrying you the same way. Right now, lower and lower, softer and softer, the same way. the same way. And take the inventory before you go, the way she took hers on the dark stair, not the appraiser's kind, the keeper's kind, the one you take by feel. You are warm enough, you are fed enough, you are clean enough. Say them slowly, the old triad, the whole estate of an ordinary night, and notice that every one of them is true of you, here, now, without your lifting a finger further. Warm enough. The covers have already done it. The room is holding. Fed enough. Whatever today was, it fed you to the end of it, and tomorrow will feed itself. Clean enough. By the standard of every century there has ever been, the water and the cloth have done their work on you today, and your linen is clean by hands somewhere down a long, long line of hands, and you can rest inside it the way they rested inside theirs, acquitted, at ease, off duty. That's more than most nights in most centuries could promise. That's more than she dared count on some winters. And it's yours tonight without single can carried up a single cold stair. Take it. It's enough. It was always the definition of enough. Tomorrow there will be water again. There is always water again. Tomorrow there will be the basin, whatever shape your basin takes, and the small bright shock of the first splash, and the day standing up in you the way it stood up in her. Tomorrow there will be cloth to wear and cloth to wash, the quiet tide of linen going out grey and coming back white that has never once stopped moving in 500 years. Tomorrow there will be the little maintenances, the sweeping and the airing and the wiping down, the endless unglamorous war that no one ever finally wins and no one who loves their life ever finally quits. But that's tomorrow. That is all tomorrow's. The system runs on daylight and it has no night shift. Nothing in it can be poured, boiled, combed, scrubbed or counted in the dark, and so the dark is yours entirely, unconditionally, the one appointment of the day that keeps itself. Right now there is only this, the warmth, the weight, the slow watchman's round of your own pulse, the breath going out a little longer than it comes in. Right now is the covered fire. Right now is the folded press. Right now is the held breath of the curfewed city, and you inside it, one more safe window going dark. Centuries will pass. They already have. You felt them pass tonight, all 4 of them in a single evening, and you know now how it goes. The houses you saw will fall or be museums. The bridge with the houses on it will be pulled down stone by stone, and the river will run on without its white noise, and other bridges will learn the trick of standing. The buck tubs will become washing machines. The lye will become powders in bright boxes. The rushlights will become the small lamp you switched off, or are about to. The gong farmer's cart will become a truck that comes on Thursdays. The Leet Court will become the council office. The gossip will become whatever the gossip has become. Every instrument in tonight's story will be traded for a better one, and every better one will be traded again, and the people doing the trading will laugh, each time at the people they replaced. That seems to be part of the machinery too, and perhaps by now, having seen what the laughing missed, you'll be gentler about it than most. But people will still wash their faces in the morning, still comb out a child's hair by the light there is, patient as weeding, still sniff the doorway and know whose house is kept, still boil the week out of the cloth one way or another, and fold it warm and feel the day close like a press, still lie down at the end of it, clean enough, in the dark, listening to the room hold. Some things don't change. The wants don't change. The hands change everything else, generation after generation, and hand the wants on untouched. And somewhere far down that line of hands, this is the last picture, and then we're done. somewhere down the line from the weaver's wife of Coventry stands you tonight, exactly where she stood on the stair. At the quiet end of a finished day, the household of your life all counted and folded as well as it's gonna be, nothing left that can't wait for light. She let go of the week from that stair, every Monday of her working life, and the letting go was the one skill her century and yours share whole and undamaged, needing no translation, no footnote, no source but the oldest one. Bodies know it. Bodies have always known it. Yours knows it now. You can feel the knowledge rising through you like warmth through banked ash, loosening the jaw, unknotting the shoulders, pouring slow lead into the arms, closing the ledger of the day entry by entry until the page is done and the book shuts soft and the strong box under the floor of you locks itself for the night. Everything of value kept, everything safe. So bless them out, the 10 of them, one breath each, and let each blessing be a step down. The merchant's wife sleeping above her clean cellar, let her have quiet streets. Breathe. The gossip of Norwich, her long night's work alive and crying in another house. Let every hand she ever held hold. Breathe. The farm wife in Kent, rosemary in her braid. Let the fine Saturdays outnumber the rain. Breathe. The soap boiler's wife, her ledger square. Let the batch set by Thursday, and the beacons stay dark a while yet. Breathe. The dairymaid, 19, the stone cooling at her back. Let her aches always be small ones, and the eldest maid always be near. Breathe. The chamber woman of the 100-foot gallery, let her knees forgive her, and the meadow sweet last till the next cutting. Breathe. The market woman of Southwark, sage and salt and 2 teeth gone, let the rest hold, God willing, a long time yet. Breathe. The carrier of cans at Windsor, let the water be lighter tomorrow, or the trips fewer, or the fire high when she's done. Breathe. The alewife of Stratford, rain on her roof. Let the gutters run clean by morning and the gossip stay kind, or at least stay funny. Breathe. And the weaver's wife of Coventry, last to bed, first to the basin, keeper of the press and the whole white argument of her house. Let her sleep the sleep she earned, which is the deepest kind there is. Breathe. Whoever they each really were, and they were each really someone, the century closed over them gently in the end, as it closes over everyone, and it is closing now, page by page, and you can let it. Let it come then. Let sleep take you the way the tide took the wash-water out of the buck, slow and sure and downward, drawn off from the bottom, no effort anywhere in it. Let the 10 rooms go out like the 10 windows they are, one and another, unhurried, until the whole long street of the past is dark and soft behind you. Let the century fold itself away like linen from the summer hedge, warm from the sun, corner to corner, edge to edge, smaller and smaller, sweeter and sweeter, into the press, into the dark, into the lavender, kept. Let the water still. Let the fires stay banked. Let the combs rest on the chests, and the patterns stand by the doors, and the bells hang silent in their towers till morning. Let the archives sleep. All that paper, all those names, safe in their acid-free dark, needing nothing from you. Let the arguments sleep too. Every lie is counted, every answer filed. You can set the whole case down now. It will keep. Truth keeps better than anything. That's the one thing tonight proved 10 times over. Let your own day loosen thread by thread, the way a tight braid loosens under patient fingers. No pulling, just ease, just ease. Let your thoughts go the way the rinse water went, carrying off the small grit of the day, clearer with every pore, clearer, clearer, until what's left is only clean quiet, and the quiet is warm, and the warmth is heavy, and the heaviness is good. You're warm enough, you're clean enough, you're safe enough. You have a roof and a bed, and a morning coming with water in it, and that is the whole fortune this story was ever about. The entire estate of the 10 sleeping women and every soul in their sleeping kingdom, and it is yours, all of it, tonight, without carrying, without boiling, without cost. Enough, enough, enough. Feel how the word itself slows things down, how it settles like linen settling into the press, like ash settling over coals, like a house settling onto its beams for the night. Nothing more is needed, nothing more is owed. The day is proved and entered. The week will keep. The wants are met. The old 5 wants, warm and fed and clean and safe and, nearly now, rested. The 5th one is arriving as you listen. It has been arriving this whole last while on its own schedule, needing nothing from you but stillness, and you have given it stillness, and it is almost here. Morning will come the way it came to all of them, greyly, gently, with bells or without, with the smell of banked fires waking under their ash, and water waiting cold in the basins, and the whole patient system standing ready to begin again, wash and wear, pour and fold, the long kind war that keeps every human house. It will find you as it found them, warmer for the rest, readier for the water, one more day down the long line of hands. The same as it found the weaver's wife, every grey Coventry dawn of her working life. The same as it found the dairymaid 5 o'clock and the cows already calling. The same as it found the Queen herself, in boiled lawn behind her guarded doors. The same as it has found every sleeper in every kept house down all the mornings there have ever been, and will find them long after every machine you own is a curiosity in someone's museum drawer beside the boxwood combs. Morning is very good at its work. It has never once failed to arrive, and it needs no help from you tonight. But that is morning's business, and morning is far away, hours and hours away, a whole dark countryside of sleep away, white hedges and slow rivers and mill wheels turning in it, all of it yours to cross at drifting pace. No cart to meet, no tide to catch, no can to carry, no line to stand in at the conduit behind neighbours with their buckets and their news. There is nothing to hold on to and no reason to hold it. Everything is minded. The watch is walking your streets. The rain is rinsing your gutters. The fire is keeping itself. The linen is asleep in the press, and the press is asleep in the house, and the house is asleep in the night, and the night is held, as it always was, as it always is, by nobody at all and holds anyway. That was the secret under the whole century, if it comes to it. Under all the boiling and the counting and the courts, the day was work, endless work, and the work was real, and the hands paid for it. But the night asked nothing. The night was the one province of their hard world that ran without labour, the one white field nobody had to bleach, and they walked into it every evening with empty hands, the way you're walking now, slower now, the way you're walking now. So let the lid come down now, soft as the lid of the linen press on a full week's work. Let the last light go the way the rushlight went, a small leaning flame, a thread of smoke, a smell of tallow fading, and no one sorry to see it out. Let the sounds of your room step back one by one, politely, like gossips leaving a birth chamber on tiptoe, pulling the door to behind them, leaving only breathing in the dark. Let your breath be the last sound left, going out a little longer than it comes in, out a little longer than in, the oldest lullaby, the one every century has sung to itself without knowing it was singing. The women of this story are 400 years asleep, and the sleep was kind to them, and it will be kind to you. They kept their houses, you kept your day. The linen is folded, the fire is covered, the door is barred, the account is closed, and the account is good. Sleep now the way they slept, deep in clean linen, deep in a kept house, deep in the turning year, trusting the morning to bring the water. Good night.